Hey guys, Dozer here bringing you a new video talking about the power curve in Flesh and Blood, a way to analyze it, and how that power curve is going to help us understand how the new cards in Tales of Aria are going to shake out in the coming months as we enter the Tales of Aria meta. So let's get started. I'm just going to sit over here for a moment. There we go. Sounds comfy right there. So in Tales of Aria, we got three new characters. We've got Briar, the Runeblade, Lexi, the Ranger, and Oldheim, the Guardian. All of these are elemental heroes, being able to use multiple elements, such as Briar using Earth and Lightning, Lexi using Lightning and Ice, and Oldheim using Ice and Earth. They all get to have special mechanical interactions based on the elements that they have access to, and they all have multiple play styles depending on how you want to build your deck, and not only being fun in draft and limited formats, but also seeming to be very powerful in the constructed format as well. And so what I wanted to talk about today is the new cards in the set and how we can evaluate how powerful they are compared to the older cards in the game, and let you in on a bit of a, not a secret exactly, but a system that I've been cooking up for a while that other people have caught on to a little bit, but I haven't seen posted around, so I thought I'd share it. So we can get into it right here. So if we have these three cards, the Channel Lake Frigid, Channel Mount Heroic, and Channel Thunderstep, I'm going to be arguing that these cards are overpowered on a strictly numeric basis. Not the fact that their mechanics are unfair, but that the amount of value that they produce is strictly more powerful than any other card in the game. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look at Wounding Blow, Wounding Blow is one of the original cards from Flesh and Blood that came out in WTR as a common. And if we look at it, we can see that it has a red pip here in the top, which means it is a 1-pitch card. It costs us 0 resources to play. It has 4 attack and 3 block. Well, if we take all those resources and we add them together and subtract the cost, we can see that the card is worth 8 points. 1 pitch, 4 attack, 3 block, that's 8 points, but it costs us 0, so there you go. It costs us 8. Well, if we take a look at some other generic cards and see if this value holds true, assuming that all the cards are balanced around each other, let's see what we can find out. So Raging Onslaught and Brutal Assault. Well, with Brutal Assault and Raging Onslaught, we've got red pitch, 3 cost, 7 attack, and 3 block. That adds us up to, hey, look at that, it's 8. 1 plus 7 and 3 minus 3 is 8. And then for Brutal Assault, we've got 1 minus 2 plus 6 plus 3, and that's also 8. So right off the bat, these generics, these vanillas that are just stats, are equaling out to 8 points. So assuming that all of the cards in the game are balanced and that nothing's strictly overpowered, we can find that they'll follow this number. So let's see if we can see that trend hold true. So for Head Jab is a 1 pitch, 0 cost, 3 attack, 2 block. But that's only 6 value. But it's got some text on it. And that text says Go Again. And as we all know, Go Again lets us get an action point. So we can see here that Go Again, making up the difference in power, is going to get us up to 8 if it's equals 2. Which means that the devs are telling us that Go Again is worth 2 points of value on a card. And if we look out across multiple cards, we'll see that that holds true. Especially when we look to Illusionist cards, we can see some interesting trends about how the various keywords on all these cards kind of start to layer together. So for Spiritual Seriality, it costs us 1, blocks 3, pitches 1, and attacks for 5 with Go Again. If we add all those together, that gives us 10 value. Whoa, this card's OP, right? And an Enigma Chimera costs us 2, blocks 3, pitches red, and attacks for 8. Whoa, that's OP, that's 10 points. But they both have Phantasm. And Phantasm's a pretty big downside. So your whole card can be destroyed and negated effectively if your opponent blocks with the right type of card. So we have to account for the fact that Phantasm's actually worth -2 points. Right? So if we look out across all the cards in the game, we can start to find these little trends popping up where if we cross-reference them against other cards, we can start to find what the devs weighted each of these conditions and elements as when they balanced the cards. So for instance like Prismatic Shield. It's got 1 pitch, you make 3 Spectral Shields, it's an instant, and it costs 3. So how do we get that to equal 8? Well, if we assume that a Spectral Shield is worth at least 2 points because it can heal us by 1 effectively, and it can be used to attack, especially with Luminaris for 1, we can see that the instant portion seems to be worth about 4 to get us up to 8. 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 4 is 11, and minus 3, that's 8. That gets us right in line with the other cards in the game. Well, how do we know that an instant's worth 4? Well, if we look at other instants, such as Sigil of Solace, we can see that, indeed, 1 pitch plus 3 life plus 4 is 8. So, in this case, an instant is worth 4. That's just by the fact that you can play it at any time, and you have this flexibility. You pay for that by it being an instant. Also, these cards have raw generic value. There's no real condition for them, they just happen, so they can be worth 8. Other instants, like Reinforce the Line, are going to have slightly more value because there's a condition to get their effect off. You have to be blocking with an attack action to get the extra defense buff, and so you're getting 1 extra value for meeting the condition when you play those other types of cards. Further, we can look at some of the new cards out of Aria, so we can look at Icequake. Well, Icequake's got 1 pitch, costs 1, blocks 2, has Go Again, and gives 3 attack. If we add all that together, that's going to be about 7 value before we factor in the Frostbite tokens. And for every Frostbite that we get, we're going to have an additional value. So even if this just hits once, it's got our full value out of it, and can give us even more. Lightning Press is 3 attack, 1 pitch, and an instant, so hey, that's 8 value, because it costs 0. So yeah, Lightning Press is really strong, but it's not overpowered. It's strictly in line with the other cards in the game, it's just very efficient at doing what it does and gives you a lot of lines of play. Invigorate, on the other hand, is a 1 pitch, 2 block, Go Against, that's 5 valued as a baseline, and if you fuse, you get plus 4. So if you fail to fuse, it's only worth 5 points, and if you do fuse, it's worth 9. So already, you got this really undercurved card that could be slightly overcurved if you get it to pay off in a dedicated deck. So that feels really good as a build-around type of thing, where you can get a little bit more value than you expected by building your deck a very specific way. So I'm loving to see those slight increases in the power curve with a substantial downside if you fail to meet the requirement, especially if your hand's attacked and you don't have all these combo pieces together to get the full value out of your hand. But then we move on to Lake Frigid. So let's take this same approach and apply it to Lake Frigid. Well, it's got 3 pitch, it costs us 2, it blocks for 3, and has Go Again. So already, right off the bat, we're starting at 6 value out of the 8 that we're expecting out of any generic card. And it has this ability that says cards and activated abilities that our opponents use cost an additional 1. Well, weapons are activated abilities. Equipment is normally an activated ability. All cards are covered by Channel Lake Frigid. And because of Channel Ice, this card can stick around for much longer than 1 turn. So if we start adding all that together, what we're seeing is that there's a base of 6 value, and every time your opponent loses a resource, that's basically like us gaining a resource, right? Gaining a value every time our opponent does something. So once your opponent has done 2 actions or played 2 cards while this is on the field, you've already gained every bit of value out of this card that you could have asked for. As an unconditional, unremovable aura that gives you full opportunity cost, full value after only 2 actions done by your opponent, with the infinite ceiling, this card starts to become a bit problematic when you start to break down the numbers. Cards and activated abilities on a single turn when you play this could be something like a defense reaction. If you're turning off their defense reactions, that's incredibly powerful. If it sticks around for 1 turn by pitching a single ice card, then you get to stop their entire turn. If they do more than 1 action at all per turn for 2 turns while you keep this out, because it's not hard to keep this out at all, then yeah, your opponent's not going to really be able to do much. They're going to be giving you free value by trying to play through this crazy taxing effect that you put on top of them. And again, there's no removal for this. There's no counterplay to this. There's no threshold you have to break through, and there's no way to destroy it. So your opponent just has to think, okay, do I try and play through it at a strict disadvantage and giving my opponent value? Or do I just block out to deny them the value and just accept all the on hits and breakpoints they're throwing at me Well, my defense reactions cost me additional resource. And if you force them to discard with things like Winter's Bite, or you force them to discard off things like Chilling Ice Vein or other such effects, I mean, you're putting them into a lose-lose situation when you're coming at them, especially if you're playing Guardian or something with Tear Asunder in this card. I mean, with a 4-card hand, you can easily play Lake Frigid, pitching a blue. You play Tear Asunder, pitching a blue, and you do that from Arsenal, and then you just play, you do Swing with Your Hammer for a blue, and you're just crushing them. I mean, there's nothing your opponent can really do about it, and other than try and block out and just try and survive and wait for the Frigid to pass. But the problem is that Lake Frigid, at the end of your turn, you'll draw up after you play it, so you'll draw 4 cards. Let's say you kept it around for 1 turn. You play out your next turn, you draw 4 more cards. Your Channel Lake Frigid, you've probably kept it around again because it's not hard to keep 2 ices in your pitch, especially for Oldheim or Lexi. And then on your 3rd turn, after you've drawn up all these different cards, the odds that you've drawn into another Lake Frigid and can play it again are super high. So even if this one's destroyed after a couple turns, it's really easy for you to replace it, and your opponent just is going to still have to just block out and just not do anything for basically the rest of the game until this thing goes away. So if we look at stuff like Pulse of Volthaven and use the same convention about how to evaluate the power of cards, we can see that, okay, sure, it's a 1 pitch, that's an instance that starts at 5 value, and hey, look, that's got +4, that's a 9 power, that's really strong. Well, yeah, it is, but it's a 1-of. There's no way to recur it, because currently in the game, there's no way to recur instance. So you're getting 1 extra value on only Lightning, Ice, or Elemental attacks once per game. While stuff like Channel Mount Heroic and Channel Lake Frigid can give you as much value as you have cards, or as much value as your opponent has cards. And my issue with Channel Lake Frigid compared to Mount Heroic is that Channel Mount Heroic requires you to have the synergy as the player playing Mount Heroic. If you don't have cards in your hand to activate with this, or cards to pitch to keep it alive while also having cards to play with it, you get 0 value out of this card. 0 bonus value, that is. You have to hit 2 attack action cards to get value out of this card. And then after that, you have to pray that you can keep it alive and keep having enough cards to keep attacking your opponent. But the thing about Lake Frigid is that this card doesn't require any of that. You play this card, you require 0 synergy out of your hand to get value out of it. All you gotta do is pitch a single blue to keep it around, or a single ice card, rather, to keep it around. And then your opponent has no way to get rid of it, no way to break the aura, no way to break through a threshold, like with Frostbites. You don't have to hit with anything to activate this effect, like every other Frostbite effect that's printed on a card, where it's like, oh hey, if this hits, create Frostbites under your opponent's control, that go away once they pay for them. This basically just sits around and just says, yeah, no, I played this card, and now you have to deal with Frostbites on everything that you do on your turn. Good luck. In the meantime, I'm going to Arsenal, I'm going to draw up, you're going to struggle to play a single card on your turn. I'm going to crack back at you with a full hand of 5 cards with no restriction on my part, and I'll just happen to pitch my ice blues that I put in my deck, because for some reason almost every ice card is a blue when they're good, like Winter's Bite, Blizzard, Channel Lake Frigid itself, etc. The amulets. And I'm just going to keep attacking you. By the way, your defense reactions will cost an additional 1 for every single time you try to activate one. All of your equipments aren't going to do anything because it's going to cost you more resource to activate your equipments, like Find Spring Tunic, or even it'll cost you resources to activate things like Energy Potion. So good luck. While I have 0 pressure put onto me, I can keep my whole hand, throw stuff at you, and force you to choose between blocking out and denying me value, or me forcing you to discard by shooting all my breakpoint arrows at you with crazy on-hit effects. So yeah, no, this card is very, very strong. And I'm disappointed in it. I mean, I really am disappointed that a card like this exists where it's unconditional. There's to give the value immediately. And it's super easy for you to have a single ice card in hand to pay for this on the first turn. And if your opponent if their only counterplay is to do nothing, that feels terrible. even if that does become the answer in the meta over time, and even if this card doesn't come to rule the meta, which, I mean, I think it will, just because, you know, the only way to play around this card is to go tall, if you want to keep playing the game. The problem is, which class goes the tallest? Well, that's Guardian. Guardian can go the tallest while playing the fewest cards. Every other class has to play at least 2 or 3 cards a turn to really do anything of note. You know, Warrior has to play multiple cards a turn. Prism has to play multiple cards a turn. Mechanologist has to load their pistol multiple times per turn. And this works on that too. So, you know, the only class that really can go tall enough to counter this is Guardian. And, well, one of the Guardians is an ice character that can run this card. So, you know, it seems, from a first glance, before the meta is really settled and before the cards have all officially come out, and from playtesting and all that, that this card is just unconditional, very easy value that requires no synergy from the person playing it, other than the fact that they just put ice blues in their deck. Compared to Mount Heroic or Channel Thunderstep, where you actually have to have cards alongside it to get the value out of it, this card just gives you that free value, and again, has no counterplay. There's no way to stop your opponent from keeping this card around, because your only interaction at this point is to attack them, and all of your cards that are going to be attacking them are going to cost you an additional resource. So you're giving them value for free, making it easier for them to block. They're under no penalties or restrictions on their own. You know, they can use defense reactions still. They can still easily pitch cards, and unless you can threaten them with a significantly threatening on-hit effect, something like a pummel, or, you know, something like, hey, well, I wonder if Guardian has an effect that just kind of messes with your opponent's hand. Oh yeah, all the ice cards and all the Guardian cards do that. So, you know, as someone who doesn't really play Guardian, who's looking at Guardian as the direct and most obvious answer to deal with this card, and just the power that it brings, the fact that Guardian also can run this card is a little worrying for the competitive scene, because we just had Chain rule the format for the past God knows how many months, and now, yeah, Prism won the calling, but she was teched just to handle Chain. And if you have to tweak your deck to answer Frost and give up your matchups in other places, that's going to feel pretty terrible. So I'm hoping that Ice can make an impact in the meta without completely warping it. That'd be my hope. But the value, just mathematically, on this card is definitely there. It forces you into a lose-lose situation where you either try and fight back and you give them value for free, or you block out and let them hit you and pummel you to death until the card goes away. So hopefully my worries are unfounded. Hopefully this card will not break the meta, and hopefully Ice is not going to be dominating us for the next who knows how many months before we get our next set released. So I'm hoping that if the meta does start to sour because of this card and cards like it, that LSS will at least think about banning these cards while not printing more of them, because that'll just cause more problems in the future. Or the less favorable outcome would be for them to print cards that directly interact with cards like this, where it's like, oh, this can destroy target aura. Now, as a Prism player, that would make me very sad, but if that's what it takes to make cards like this have counterplay, that's not just blocking out and hoping for the best, you know, that might be what we have to see. But I wouldn't be surprised if they banned this card. It's just really, really too strong mathematically compared to every other card in the game. Its ceiling's incredibly high. Its floor is incredibly low. Like, if this was a 0 block, if this was an instant, if this was an item, you know, 0 block, blue pitch, fine, whatever. You know, that's totally reasonable. If it lasted for 1 turn, fine, totally reasonable. But it's a 3 block ice card, so it has synergy with Fuse. Blue, so there's no problem at all for pitching it. It has Go Again, so you get to have your whole turn while preventing your opponent from doing things like instants and defense reactions efficiently. And then it only costs 2, so you can pay for this with just a yellow or a blue and just go about your merry way. You also don't have to banish anything from your pitch pile either. It's not like you're having to banish ice cards from your pitch and sacrifice your late game for some very powerful early game. No, you just pitch cards like you would normally, and you just get to have this crazy powerful floodgate effect. So, you know, again, I'm hoping that this doesn't break the format. I'm hoping that we find answers to get around this card for not just Guardians, but for every class to be able to figure out how they want to play around this card. And hopefully our tournaments don't go to time, because they're already kind of going a little long, and if the only counterplay is to wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, then hopefully we don't have too many draws going on, because that'll just be unfun, at least in my opinion. So, otherwise, thanks for watching. I hope this was informative for you. I hope you got a bit better of an idea about how LSS seems to be balancing their cards, and how to look out for cards that can potentially break the format in the future. As always, it's a pleasure talking with you guys. Feel free to leave anything that you have a disagreement about in the comments, or if you have other further thoughts on the situation, I'd love to read about them in the comments. You can also find me on Discord if you go to my community Discord link posted in the description of this video. And if you do like the Tank Prism logo down there, you can buy the playmat that I've made, and that's posted up on Inked Gaming if you follow the link in the description. So, thanks for watching, stay cool, and have a good one.